go. I'm Catherine Wygant Fawcett, the Executive Director of the Institute for Family-Owned Business, or IFOB, or IFOB. I'd like to thank Priscilla Hanson-Mahoney from Blazing Trails Coaching, one of our next-gen facilitators, for being our online chat and technology coordinator today. She's playing the role of Brooke Stewart, who had her little girl, Sienna, and she'll be back in 3 months in March when we come back to this room and do it again. But Priscilla is helping us out, so I appreciate that very much. I also would like to thank Seth and his whole team for providing this wonderful space for us. We appreciate it very, very much. As we all know, because it just went on, we'll be recording this program for later viewing. We'll include the PowerPoint slides because some of them have quite a bit of detail further on, and we'll have some nice white papers that Cynthia's going to have for us in the follow-up email after the program. I'd also like to do a big thank you to our sponsors, KeyBank and MainBiz, for today. And in a few minutes, I'll welcome Tony DeSoto, our new market president for KeyBank in May, to come up and say a few words. At the IFOB, we provide support and champion the success of family-owned businesses, the backbone of our economy, with education, networking, and other services. This year, we offered over 60 programs, both online, in-person, and hybrid. Today is our last program of the year, and then we have our holiday party on January 25th from 5 to 7 at the Woodlands in Falmouth, and we hope you all will come join us for our mingle and jingle post-holidays, because everybody said holidays are so busy, so let's do it in January. We'll hope there is not a snowstorm. So we'll hope you'll join us. And our board just voted on a whole new line of programs for 2023. I just picked one of our members to help join us for that. And so that'll soon be up, and we're going to have a whole new website, and it's going to be much easier to log in and register and do all that. So that's all coming in the new year. Now I have to click to this. There we go. So this is the last in our 4-part series on how-tos, where we share best practices from industry experts and hear from our family business leaders. Our program is titled Meaningful Giving as a Family Business, Panel Discussion with Prominent Business Leaders, which is timely in this season of giving. Randy Hogan here is the president of Hogan Philanthropy Consulting, and she approached us last year to do a program on philanthropy. And this is the first time I think we've done it in the 8 years that I've been here. So some of you who've been here a few more years ahead of me, I don't know if we've ever done one, so it'd be fascinating. So we're delighted to have Cynthia McDonald, the National Director of Philanthropy, Senior Vice President, KeyBank, to join us here with her expertise as well, all the way from Albany, New York. So thank you for coming. And our family business panelists are Adam Lee, Chairman of the Board, Lee Auto Mall. Adam's father, Shep, and his sister, Kathy, started the IFOB over 25 years ago, and we're delighted to have you here today. We have Dottie Chalmers-Cutter, owner and VP of Operations for Chalmers Insurance, and our IFOB board chair. And then we have Joe Capozza, the third president of Capozza Floor Covering Center and Old Port Specialty Tile, and he's our vice chair. Towards the end of the program, we'll ask you to please fill out a quick survey, and we'll bribe you with door prizes. And Joe and Teresa brought something fabulous. And then for those of you online, we'll put it in the chat and Zoom for you. Your feedback is really important for us. That's how we develop our programs, and that's how we did that for this year and last year, recurring years. We'll also send the recording, the survey, and any follow-up resources for you at the end. We're going to try something different this time for Q&A. You might see that there's recipe or index cards on the table. I have pens in the middle. So if you have a question, we'll ask that you please write it, and then I'll come along and collect it, and then Randy will be answering those questions. And then Priscilla will work with people on the chat so that they'll be able to do that as well. So I can turn it over to Randy now. Thank you all.
Morning.
No, sorry.
Oops, we have to- we have to-
Tony, I'll be very quick.
No, I'm so sorry. That was my
Our
fault.
sponsor.
He's our new president too. of the-
Just President Key, not anything else. And so good morning. So thank you, Catherine and Randy, for putting this program together. when Catherine and I were talking about how KeyBank could be engaged in continuing to sponsor the Institute for this year, and she mentioned this program, I thought it was a great opportunity for us to engage and be able to introduce Cindy to all of you in the market. And one of the advantages that I really enjoy about working at Key is being able to provide our team locally, but also to be able to bring in national resources and expertise like Cindy has to our clients and then into settings like this. So I'm very excited about the session this morning and it being maybe the first that IFOB has done. So thank you all for coming, and I won't take up too much time, but thank you, Catherine.
Thank you. The first, and let's keep it going. Yes. So this morning, I want to start with a story about an apple orchard. Begun years ago by a young couple, decades ago actually, by a young couple on the other side of this country. And they, as individual children, grew up individually worried about kids they heard who'd gone hungry in other parts of the world and lived in crushing poverty. In fact, the boy said to his father one day, "Hey, wouldn't it be neat to own an apple orchard that could also help kids be fed and meet their needs?" So this couple met and started this orchard. This is an opal apple, which I bought from Whole Foods yesterday, so you should try it out. The early years of their business, as you all know, were a real struggle. They went through some real big challenges, but over time they were able to expand, buy more acreage, grow new varieties, add fruits to the orchard, and start to build other buildings, an on-site packaging plant, and so forth. They found great financial success. And the people who came to work with them primarily were young men migrating up from Mexico. And as they got to know the stories of the families that they were trying to make better lives for, the couple talked to each other and said, let's remind ourselves we didn't get into this to build something for ourselves. We got into this because we cared about the people that we were working with, and we want to make things better for the community. So I had the privilege of touring this space with this couple and looking at what they provided for with their financial success, what they provided for their employees, included things like on-site subsidized childcare. There was a community center that they built, a health clinic, schools that they ran, and then amazingly, and an inspiration to see a whole community of safe, affordable housing for their year-round and seasonal employees, along with a path to full home ownership. So as the business grew, this family then started a private foundation, and they involved their children in their philanthropy. Purpose: love, respect, compassion, community. The 5 values that drove them when they were young, as they were building their business and kept close to them, as they expanded into philanthropy and community care, and as they continue their work today and define the family legacy that they are stewarding. So it's important. You could quickly look to start a giving program, get it up and running quickly and easily, and just begin. But this is a time where going slow to then later go fast is really key. To take the time to define your vision and values clearly so that that is the driving purpose for what you're doing. You're going to be developing a strategy that is going to be involving a lot of people, and you want to inspire them with this core reason for why you are giving. It's foundational to making the greatest impact. When I work with clients, we spend a good deal of time on this, and it can feel impatient, but this is important because it is to have a compelling philanthropic mission statement really guides you to that purpose. So consider, and we'll have our wonderful panelists discuss this a little bit later, what are the values that you want to see reflected in your philanthropy? What do you stand for in your work? Next, we go to Mexico, and I want to talk with you about Lucy, who is a very successful property developer owning a company with her family. She operates this business in a large city in the United States. The person pictured here is not Lucy. I'll talk about Pasquale in a second. But Lucy operates her business in a large city where her peers and friends are top philanthropists. Their names are on art museums, medical institutions, colleges and universities. Their names are associated with really critical social service care needs. But nothing really clicked for Lucy. She wanted to take her time and really figure it out. Nothing really grabbed her, but then she and I traveled to Mexico. And that's where we met Pasquale, who's pictured here with her daughter on the streets of the city center selling handcrafts that she made with money that she got from a microloan to help start her business, to further her dream of really creating a better life for her daughter. She sold things like this felt llama to tourists nearby. So Lucy got to talk with Pasquale, and she met the management team of the microcredit bank that supported Pasquale's dream. That's when it clicked for Lucy. Empowering women to achieve financial security then defined her giving strategy. And her philanthropic mission statement, which you'll see in part here on the screen, through giving, I can connect with women who are also striving to succeed. And by doing so, I hope and believe that my own life is filled with purpose. She took that intention into her business as well. And if you go onto the company website, on the philanthropy page, there's a statement there that talks about what the business's essential reason is: to improve lives through social responsibility. And they talk about their approach in giving, driven to thank all of those in the city for the success that they've bestowed upon this. And then the familiar phrase, which we first saw in Lucy's statement: through giving, we hope and believe that our own lives are filled with purpose. Again, the temptation is to jump right in and pick issues and organizations. Think about what others are doing in the community, or what you hear about is good work in the community. And if you're giving and you want to support worthy causes, if you want to make product donations, write a check, that's really great. Continue doing that. But if you want to move beyond check writing and go into meaningful strategic philanthropy, it's worth it, again, to take the time to think, what are the causes that align with who I am as a person? What do I identify with really closely? Be deliberate and develop your clear set of priorities, including what not to do. We talk about a little bit around the importance of how you're going to say no. Be clear about even being able to say no with intention and purpose, to clear that through. You'll find in this work partners that then match your interests, and then will start to surface. And you can talk with your advisors around, help me find those causes that align with this value and this issue area that I care so much about. That will give you a giving program that is going to have longevity, because you've learned about the community, you've listened to what their needs are, the people who are living in this experience, and have that direct knowledge of the work, and you will begin to build trust, and that will deepen over time. So as you select your aligned causes, what are those that align with your business values and vision? So we've defined vision and values, we've selected the aligned causes, still lots of questions. How much should we give? What do we do with all these requests coming from the community? How do we get organized, not feel so overwhelmed by everything? This is not my first thing to do. I got into business to support the community, but this feels like a lot. How do I get organized? Families who are starting their company's philanthropic program need a detailed plan, need to define their financial goals, giving goals, and prioritize the categories. Ideally have a point person or a full-time staff, or maybe a department that is focusing on this plan and seeing it into action and making sure that they're engaging others. Philanthropy is voluntary action for the public good. And when I work with people, we look at these 5 T's. Time, because again, remember, giving is not just about financial charitable gifts. Time, the time that your volunteer team is out doing one-off projects, or maybe they're showing up weekly somewhere. Talent, the skills and knowledge that you bring to boards of directors that you serve on, or maybe you have employees who have specialty in marketing that can help with a campaign that a nonprofit partner is seeking to implement. Or maybe it's research. You can do work on white papers for a nonprofit as they're trying to dig into an issue area. Treasure we know about. Ties goes from one introduction that could really leverage things for an organization, introducing to them to someone, or maybe it's a group of people, or maybe it's a ties through collaboration of partners. You're another company, or maybe 2 or 3 nonprofits together working. That's another way that you can powerfully give. And testimony, using your voice to speak up for causes that you care about and support those organizations that are part of your giving priorities. So when I work with clients, we work on through these 5 T's and we create a whole giving matrix that includes all of the resources that are going into this. And if you're already giving, maybe you can use this as a way to figure out where are the gaps that we might be able to fill, or are there other priorities that we can develop? So a word right now for the small businesses. I'm telling stories about fairly significant companies, and it might seem overwhelming, like, well, how do I play a role if I'm just a small business? These steps of going through each of these pieces, defining your vision and values, selecting aligned causes, creating a giving matrix, they apply to you as well. You don't need to travel to Mexico to find causes that are important to you. You just need to look next door, read the paper, see what speaks to your heart. You don't need hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars to be able to give away. There are charities right now that have a need to fill that $500, $1,000 is going to be major impact for them. So there are partners out there waiting for you too, if you are in a small business. So the system for deciding how, where, and how much to give is important. And then the big thing that everyone talks about is impact. What's the impact that we're having? Meaningful giving is not just about the transaction of one to another and then seeing immediate results or expecting immediate results. Because we're in the social sector, social change is very different from creating or building something that the market wants or needs, and you can immediately measure that and build on it. With social issues, we're talking about very human issues. So these things can take time. And it's important to invest your time and connect with the people who are living in this experience and the nonprofit professionals who know what works and what they're learning from that. And commit to the long haul, not look for quick fixes. So a story closer to home. When I worked with LL Bean and the Trust for Public Land on a national partnership, the impact of that partnership was really centered on a common goal to make sure that everyone could enjoy time outside. Appreciating the time that it would take to make measurable change in these communities, LL Bean made a 5-year commitment to support at least 15 communities across the country to create parks and improve access to great outdoor spaces. And you see here how LL Bean is specifically calling out their values in this statement that they're advancing through philanthropy, talking about what they care about: healthy outdoor lifestyle, working to protect precious natural resources, needs in the community, And the groups we support embody many of the values and traditions that are important to them: integrity, service, respect, healthy living, and a passion for the outdoors. And I love this picture because it really solidifies my final point, which is about celebrating in community and celebrating the impact that you're making. Businesses that engage in strategic, meaningful philanthropy typically experience more growth. They have higher customer satisfaction. They have more highly engaged employees. They're able to attract and retain talent, and they build their reputation as champions in the community. Philanthropy, yes, is increasingly a key component to a strong brand. So what are the advantages that your business is realizing from its philanthropic involvement? I've worked with and had the honor of working with a number of people who've really developed profound connections through their philanthropy and made a significant difference in communities near and far, infused with great purpose that filled their lives and the lives of those around them. And we have some really terrific business owners here with us today in this room and on this panel that I'm really excited now to shift to hearing from them about the work that they're seeing. And we will go through each of these points. And they each have different perspectives about how they've developed these pieces in their business philanthropy. And at the end, after we hear from our panelists, we're going to hear from Cynthia McDonald about the vehicles that you can use, the how part of philanthropy to achieve your goals. So, and while we're working on this panel, think about questions that you want to ask and write them down on the cards, because we'll have Catherine collect them and bring them up. So the first one, defining your vision and values, being informed by your values. Let's start with you, Joe. What are the values that have been passed down to you, and how do they show up in your family business philanthropy?
Yes. So two of our values are integrity and compassion. And I'll kind of start with the history of the business in a very interesting topic, the history of tile contractors in the state of Maine. I'm sure everybody really would be excited about that. But my grandfather started the business back in 1974. And there was a company called Maine Tile, which was basically the only company in the state that could do large or any type of commercial project. And him and two other people from that company, once the company dissolved, started their own business. And he had a strong personality and his own opinions on a lot of things. And he didn't like the way things were going and how the business was. So he decided to go off and do his own thing. And the reason he wanted to do that is because he didn't feel like people were being treated with respect, customers, people that work with them. And he wanted to build a business based on the premise to treat others as you want to be treated, which is pretty simple. And that's something that my father said, oh yeah, he used to say that to me when I got started, which was just a couple of years after my grandfather started the business. And, my father and then my mother, who got into the business eventually, they really passed that down to myself and my sisters. As a kid, when it comes to our philanthropic, that's a tough word, involvement. I remember there, as a smaller business, we were always sponsoring youth hockey, little league teams. I thought that Kaposa Tile was a professional sports team when I was young. And then our first bigger endeavor was with the Barbara Bush Children's Hospital in the 90s. And they had a telethon every year. And I'm kind of like the back of house sibling, and my sisters would be on TV with my father and do their announcement. I don't know if anybody remembers that telethon. I remember as a kid watching that. And then we've taken larger roles in the business and are now owners in the business as the third generation. We've kind of tried to take those lessons and make it just like we've done with the business, just make it more strategic, more formal, and as I always joke, like turn it from into a real business. So like that's that's kind of been that compassion, integrity that's been passed down to us, and whether it be through our work in the community or just the business in general, that's we find that important to show.
Thank you. So my grandfather, like Joe, started the business. I don't think he was very philanthropic. This would be 1930s. I have no idea. I'm pretty sure they didn't give money to anything, maybe some Jewish causes. My dad was very generous, but he gave money to the things that he cared about. It didn't involve the company necessarily. It would be Pine Tree Legal or Mitchell Scholarship Foundation, a lot to the Democratic Party. And they're really social justice things that he cared about. And then I am third generation. I had two business partners. We are, like a lot of you, probably inundated with requests for funding. So we formed a contributions community support committee with the partners and our general managers. And we give to a lot of local things, boys club, girls club, local schools, because we're in a lot of communities. And then we give to the things that are important to the partners. So usually things that we are on the board of or in a lot of environmental groups.
Thanks, Adam. So I think my values are really instilled by 3 generations of Chalmers before me, the 4th generation. I really don't know anything different than to get involved in the community because as a child, my dad, mom, grandparents, aunts and uncles were involved in everything. And so I don't know any different. I think it's in my blood, 2 things in my blood, insurance and giving back to the community. As an example, I think I was 7 years old, but probably for 15 years straight, starting at 7, we were very involved in the Bridgeton 4 on the 4th road race. And all the proceeds would go to support the local Bridgeton Library. And the Chalmers family always had the 2nd mile marker water station. And so from age 7, I was out there holding cups of water like this on the side of the road while about 1,000 racers would come by and grab my water cup. And I thought that was awesome. I thought that was so cool. And so I did that every year growing up. And it was just, so I don't know any different. As another aside, I drove my daughter to school today. On my way here, she's 12 and in 7th grade. And so I was like, Sophia, I was telling her about the speech, mommy's speech today and in the community. And I said, what do you think about, you're a Chalmers in your blood. I was like, what do you think when you're in Bridgeton? What's it like for you? She goes, oh, Sissy and Papa know everybody, because we can go to Rennie's and Hannaford and shop local and everybody who, when she's with my parents, will stop and talk forever. And so she thinks they think that they're celebrities, but that it can make a trip to Rennie's take like way too long. So those values of just leading by example, of giving back, of helping your neighbor, those were just values that I learned at a very, very young age. So it's in my blood.
Let's go to Adam. Please keep the mic, so I'll ask you next. You talked about your commitment to social justice, and you've also told me that I think it's your father just said, do what's right. So how do you decide what causes and missions you and your business are going to focus on?
Well, I should define this a little better. So we have a charitable giving budget. So that's somebody writes a letter and asks, will you support our group cause? And we have a handful of guidelines. We don't do individuals. There's too many people who need something. So we don't do that. We don't do religious groups. It's the same reason. We know we're going to piss somebody off and there's just too many groups. So we try to do, the stuff you would expect, I guess. But we also have a marketing budget. And I oversee marketing, and it's sort of my sneaky way of giving a lot more money away outside of the charitable giving budget. So we do, for 2 years of the pandemic, we did $10,000 a month to either Good Shepherd, or a lot of times we did Frontline. We bought lunch for frontline hospital workers, and we did a whole bunch of hospitals through Maine and teachers, because it was a tough time for them. And it had the added benefit of there were local stores and restaurants that were dying because no one was going out to eat. So we're buying $10,000 worth of food every month from 2 or 3 different ones. We let the schools, the hospital workers pick. So The marketing part is a little more strategic. We try and pick something we care about that's important. And then we had either BLM or some TV stations do stories on them, not on us, but inevitably they would mention us. So that was really the stuff we care more about because that was driven by us. Whereas the charitable giving budget, it's people asking for money. We do things that's important to us, but you don't say no to the local high school or local soccer team or local yearbook or, there's just, it goes on and on. So I'm not sure if that answered the question.
Yes, if you could hand it, thank you, back to Dottie, because I imagine as you're focusing your giving, you might be approached by larger gifts, for smaller gifts. How are you focusing in that environment?
It's hard. Like, I don't know, we get asked every day for donations, and sometimes it's from really large asks for contributions to very large nonprofit organizations. And our strategy has been more to focus our efforts on charities in our local community. So we have 8 offices, 6 of them are in Maine, 2 of them are in New Hampshire. And we really try to support those local nonprofits in those communities that are supporting us. We have had to streamline because we can't support everything, right? We would become a nonprofit, I guess, if we did that. So we really had to concentrate, and we've narrowed it down. We call them our 3 pillars of community service or community involvement. And so we've narrowed it down to causes near and dear to our organization. So it's like relief and support to people in crisis, like the American Red Cross, for example. We host lots of blood drives throughout our footprint. Human and social services, so making sure that our neighbors' lives are met. A lot of times it goes specifically around children and food insecurity issues, and 68 hours of hunger is one of those causes near and dear to us. That we will have a lot of our coworkers packing backpacks of food for children. And they will do that. We'll give money too, but it's the community involvement time, right? Like which is another thing we'll do, is we give everybody 16 hours of paid time to donate into the community, because community involvement is a core value at Chalmers. It's something that we really felt like we had to really embody. So we said, we want you to get involved, and we will pay you for your time up to 16 hours to get involved into the community. The 3rd pillar is youth sports, education, and recreation. We live in the Lakes region area. We believe strongly in, the good that youth sports, recreation, and have the power to transform children's lives. And so we partner with a lot of organizations that support youth activities in Maine and New Hampshire. And so sometimes that means we have to say no, to Randy's point, and that's tough. No one, we don't love to say no, but we have, pretty good process in place, and we try to really be true to those 3 pillars. And we can point our clients to the 3 pillars and tell them this is why, and this is why it might be a no. We really focus on these areas. So that's helped us kind of keep it in check.
Thank you. Let's hear from Joe now.
Yeah, so a few years back, we didn't really have, or we just kind of, like Barbara Bush Children's Hospital has kind of always been, since the 90s, our big thing. But then other than that, it was pretty random. So we decided to try to become more intentional. And what we talked about was children and family units, charities that support basically, local families. Reason being, we've seen it with our own team or, other family members. We're lucky as a family. We got a strong family unit, a lot of support. Not everybody has that right from the beginning sometimes, or sometimes it's unexpected, whether it be death of a parent or a child getting sick or a family member getting sick. And that can really be a struggle if you're not expecting it. And that's where, we, like I said, Barbara Bush, Center for Grieving Children, Woodford's Family Services, Maine Children's Cancer Program, and a few others that kind of have that focus on children and the family unit. I just think it just aligns well with our values and our business. And that's not to say that we, like Dottie and Adam said, you get kind of requests all the time. I don't think we really ever say no to anything, but when it comes to, to our focus on time and the majority of the budget would go to those types of charities.
So then you get requests all the time. You rarely, if ever, say no. How do you have a system for defining your giving program, sorting through, getting organized, because it can be overwhelming getting so many requests? Can you talk about the system or the process that you have?
So to give some perspective, we have about 60 employees now. At the time we developed the program, we probably had about 50. So that was kind of the size we were, where it was getting a little overwhelming. The strategy at the time was that if something was on my desk and I didn't forget to look at it, then we might donate to it. But if not, it would go in the trash. So, so that wasn't a great way to do it. So we one of our longtime team members, she's here, Teresa, she had transitioned, she did public relations and marketing, and she actually took upon herself to look back at what we had done over the years. And at that point is where we kind of focused in on where we want to do the majority of our involvement and time. And initially it was just supposed to be that she was going to be the gatekeeper, but she's really taken it and run to kind of put some strategy to our giving. And it's not her sole role, but it's something that I think makes sense as a company like us to have somebody available to do and put a little intention into what we're doing. And then we're even at a point now that we have our intranet, which is our internal company communication system. And we have all the events that are available, the different charities that we're supporting. So our team members can get involved as well. It's not just about like my sisters or myself or going to an event, anybody. And people, people over the years have become more involved, the more intentional we've become about it.
I love hearing about the evolution from requests on your desk to now you've got this team. Adam, you mentioned the community support committee. Can you talk a little bit about that system?
Yeah, we have, I think we meet monthly. It's a conference call. And our HR director sort of reviews whatever requests came in. We have a handful of groups that we support every year. And we know, we start the year knowing we're going to sponsor Mitchell Scholarship, Pine Tree Legal, there's a bunch of them. And then we review them. And we have, you mentioned guidelines. One of the advantages of having guidelines is if you all agree, there's certain things we'll consider, there's certain things we know we won't do. We don't do travel teams, golf tournaments, beauty pageants, certain things we don't want to do them. And it's not complicated. It does make it easier to say no to the things that don't qualify. And then there's probably 6 of us on the call. We literally, if it's, Boys and Girls Club in Lewiston, we ask the people who work in Lewiston, what do you think? And if they say no, then it's no. Or if they say yes, it's yes. And these are small. These are $100, $500 requests. We get a handful of very large ones. And so our biggest gift ever is to Maine Public Broadcasting. I'm on the board and it's important to me. So that's, some of this philanthropy is determined by the interests of the owners of the company. A lot of it's driven by what people ask.
Let's hear from Dottie. Thank you, Adam.
So my dad and my uncle were, when they were running the business, they just made the decisions together. They would have like a stack of the requests on their desk, and they'd be maybe for 15 minutes every morning and just kind of go through a list. And then when I joined the business, my dad kind of bestowed upon me, he's like, here's the pile. You do something with this. And it drove me crazy. And maybe it's my type A personality. I was like, we got to have a process. And so I remember calling Lindsay Skilling and asking her, what does givers do? Because there's got to be a better way. And so I learned from Lindsay and tried to really mirror a process that was very similar. And so we basically now we created we point everybody towards our website, and we have a form on there. We ask the bulk of the charitable requests to come in through the website. And then we have a committee that meets every month and we review them all. My marketing manager is there on the call too. And we'll make our decisions again based on the 3 pillars. And then we'll either say yes or no, and then get back in touch with those organizations. And so I found that having a streamlined process like this has really helped us for sure and made it way more organized. But yeah, we've come a long way since the days of my dad and my uncle. And we were a smaller company then, and we didn't have nearly as many incoming requests for charitable that we do now. So it's just way easier to kind of streamline it. But it took some convincing, I won't lie. My partners were a little like, can't we just do what we did last year? You know, they wanted to just make it easy. I really had to kind of bring them along in this evolution to get them on the same page to show them how this was the way to go. But we're not going back to the old way.
Well, let's keep the mic with you. I have one more question for our panelists. And if there's a question that you're eager to ask, please write it on the cards and Catherine will collect because we have a bit more time. But Dottie, talk about, as we think about impact, what impact the getting involved in philanthropy has had on your business, and what does it mean to you and your family?
Sure. I think because we've been so deeply rooted in the community, it's really helped our reputation. And we also survey, we survey all of our new clients to the agency. It's hard to quantify, but if I put a number to it, I would say that about 30% of our new clients will put that they know about us through our local community presence, which is a big number. So that tells us that the work we're doing is meaningful. We're growing as a company. It's also really energized our coworkers, I'll say too, because it's a core value of community involvement. And when we're bringing on new people, new hires, and I'm onboarding them, and I'm going over our culture and our values and community involvement, and you get paid time off, we want you to volunteer in the community. The comment I usually receive from them is two things. One is that they have a definite feel for the family feel of working for our business, that we do put family first. And then the second thing we'll say is the outreach we do in the community is another reason what drew them to our company. So it's been an excellent way of recruiting and retaining our coworkers. The other thing I'm pretty proud of too is that during COVID, we created a podcast and we called it the Community Cast. And to date, we just aired our 84th episode. We put out one every week. And the goal is really to highlight the good that local business owners and nonprofit organizations are doing in our local communities. And it's been so important and meaningful discussions to not just learn about their good work and to highlight it on this platform with our listeners, but to build relationships with these people, which has been so amazing. And it's been wonderful to see that. So the goal for us really isn't not to like, oh yeah, maybe we'll write their business. That would be nice, but it's not the goal. It's really just to kind of highlight the good that so many people are doing in our local community. So that's been a really cool way for us to kind of highlight all the good. Kind of like Adam, we have community champions too, we call it. So we have one in every office. It's a coworker that basically is like the ambassador of all things community. And that's a way we're able to rally support and interest in our teammates to get involved in the community. So that's been another way that's energized our employees.
And the Community Cast, you told me you're going to be interviewing your father. Can I preview that?
Yeah, so my father's episode will air next week, and I wanted to close out our season 4 with him. And in preparation for this panel, I actually listened to the episode with him privately because it hasn't aired yet. But I listened to it again, and because it was so impactful to ask my dad, what community involvement meant to him, and to hear him talk with such pride about everything that he did, that he learned from his dad, was so special. It's one of those things that I'll file in my memory bank forever, that I got the opportunity to be able to interview him and have his voice even, preserved in that way will be really special. So yeah, it's something we're pretty proud of at Chalmers, and I won't take the credit for it. I'll give credit to my partner, Steve Cody. It was really his brainchild. And if you guys have any questions around this after, hit me up, because my 2 fabulous Chalmers people are here who run our Community Cast. And so if you have any questions about how do you do this, I can put you in touch with them. But I will say it's connected me to some awesome people. Luke Holden, CEO of Luke's Lobster. I just interviewed him last week and the episode I aired this week. He says hi, by the way. But yeah, it's really connected me to some wonderful business leaders and got to build these relationships with them. It's pretty awesome.
Nice. We're gonna look forward to hearing your upcoming with your father. Adam, would you like to talk about the impact community philanthropy, business philanthropy has had on your business?
Sure. I would also mention if any of you have heard of How I Built This, like Guy Raz on Main Public, Luke's been on it twice. And it's a really terrific, it's very entertaining. One of the things we try to do, you can give away a lot of money. That's not hard. You sit there and they show up and you write checks. But if you can be strategic, and it sounds like everybody here is certainly trying to be, we try very hard to use the marketing weight we have to promote an organization. And which is why it's important to, and I say this to a lot of people, you should give the money to the things you care about. You can fund children's charities or animals or what, you can pick something that has marketing appeal, but if it doesn't appeal to you, it's not worth as much. I'm sure it's important to you, Barbara Bush or Center for Grieving Children. But if you pick the things you care about, then it makes it a lot easier to get involved. And the partners are involved with a lot of organizations. And then figure out how to promote them, whether it's through your advertising. We haven't done this for many years. One year I think we gave $100 to a cancer care unit in Lewiston for maybe every vehicle we sold. It was successful. We ended up giving far more than we had thought we were going to give. But they talked about that for years, and people would come in, to your point, and say, someone in my family benefited from that, and that's why we're here. And then the last thing that I assume you guys all do things like this is also our employees. If an employee requests a donation to an organization that we haven't funded, if they're involved, we generally just fund it. It's almost an automatic yes. And then at this time of year, we always have an emergency fund for any employee. They have to have been there, I think, 6 months, who's in trouble. Every year we do oil, where we will give loans up to $1,000. They have to pay it back, but we don't care how long it takes. And then the same thing, just if there's an emergency, because in the end, you got to take care of your employees too. That's also it's not really philanthropy, it's just good business.
Thank you. Joe, let's hear what from you.
So we, a couple of years back, we have our strategic plan, and our stakeholders are the team, customers, and our partners. And when we did a refresh in 2021, actually, we added the community as a stakeholder with our objective to be an engaged and contributing presence in the community. We identified it as kind of something we were already doing. And, we just think it's important. We've been around almost 50 years now, and, our company's been a part of this area, part of this community, and it's really supported us. It's the reason that we even have a business. It's kind of a no-brainer, I think, to just be involved. I mean, we can run around and say, hey, you need a floor, as much as we need to. But the more involved you are, it's good business. It helps your reputation. You meet great people. You're supporting good causes. You're helping people out. So it's just, I think being intentional and strategic about community involvement, if you're able to, is just really important for a company all around.
Thank you. It's really wonderful. I'm just kind of soaking in the chance to spend a morning talking about how businesses are doing good in the community and really focusing in thoughtful, strategic ways. I'm now going to ask Cindy to talk with us about the ways you can develop that strong portfolio of giving through a range of vehicles that are available to you. Because that's often the thing, again, that people sort of jump to. Okay, how do I get this done? Do I set up a foundation? Do I have this or that or this other thing? That's important, but I often feel like that comes second. First is the kind of rich conversation that we just had here, the values that inform our giving, And really, as Adam said, it's what is meaningful to you that's going to matter and is going to stick. So thank you again to the panelists. Please think of a question that I haven't asked that you'd like to ask them. After Cindy finishes, that we will then take some questions from the audience. Cindy.
This is a very hard act to follow. So my piece is very technical, but I'm going to keep it super high level. And I do thank you for having me here today. It is amazing to listen to multi-generational giving and company support within the communities. It's just, every time I sit with business owners' families, it's just really, it hits you in the heart, and that's a good thing. So what I'm going to talk to you today about is a couple of different ways in which you can do outright gifts and plan gifts. And when they say, well, what should I be doing? And like, there's that terrible answer. Well, it depends, right? It depends on how much you want to gift, the structure you want to create, and what you have to actually give. And volunteerism is a huge part of it. And I heard that here today. So it's not just cash, stocks, and bonds, but it's the employees donating time back out to the community. So what I'm going to talk about is, again, I'm going to keep it high level. You're going to have all this information in front of you to read at your leisure. So, all right. So the first piece and part, thank you. Oh, I have to be technological too. Here we go. Is there's 6 really outright gifts that I see very common throughout the industry. So I've been with Key for 30 years in this space for 30 years, working with families and not-for-profits on planning. I'm working on plan gifts and multi-complex gifting strategies. So first and foremost is cash, right? To write the check, to get it out to the not-for-profit. And what I did was I gave you a whole ton of information that I'm not going to read to you. But basically, cash is, that's just it. You're writing the check, it's going to the donor, it's an outright gift. In your marketable securities, obviously appreciated assets. So appreciated stocks and bonds that you can gift to a not-for-profit. Obviously making sure that they have the ability to receive in that gift. And what they're doing is the big thing here is the capital gains consideration. So you're not paying capital gains on that. You're passing that off to the not-for-profit who does not pay tax on that, which is a beautiful thing. Then the third piece is donor advised funds. So I'm going to touch base on that a little bit deeper later on. But the big thing here about donor advised funds, and it's a very cool tool to educate and teach the next generation. So you can open and create a donor advised fund. You could fund it with cash or appreciated stocks. And then you don't have to gift it out to the charities of your choice immediately, because you can actually keep it in there, receive the tax deduction in the year in which you gift it. And then once you're ready to decide which charities you want to actually support, then you can do it from that point. A big key factor here is this past year, actually, I think it started in June 2021. Of course, there's legislation going on around DAS. So as of now, you can fund up your donor advised funds and keep the funds in there with no time limit before you decide which charities to support. Well, legislation is trying to be put into place, which we're monitoring. It's not there yet. That they want to accelerate. It's called the ACE Act, the Accelerated Charitable Efforts Act. So what the government's trying to do is say, listen, you're funding this donor advised fund and you're getting a tax deduction, but I don't see it going out to the charity right away. So they're going to try to shorten up that time frame and be like, I think it's 3 years that they're talking about right now. So keeping an eye around the ACE Act. It's still being, it's still in legislation. We haven't seen anything come into play yet. All right, the next 3 outright gifts that we can see as charitable contributions is real property, which is real estate, life insurance, and then actually qualified charitable distributions from your IRA. So the real estate piece is really important, because if you're going to gift real property, whether it's a primary residence, a secondary home, gas, oil, mineral rights, any kind of real property, you have to know if the charity is able to actually accept it in. This is, excuse me, I see a lot of families and business owners with real estate that this is an actual asset that they really like to gift, whether they're funding a charitable trust with it, whether they're actually creating a life estate and pushing out the real estate to the not-for-profit at the end. But the big thing here is, again, can the not-for-profit take in that real property? Is it in their gift acceptance policy? Life insurance is another super easy one. That's literally just transferring ownership of a life insurance policy over to the not-for-profit. It's a simple, easy step to take, working with the insurance company to create, to complete the paperwork. And then the last one is, this came into play a couple of years ago, which is one that I worked with a couple of clients with, which was very successful, was those individuals that are age 70.5 that are within the required minimum distribution mode of their IRAs can gift up to $100,000 straight from the IRA to a not-for-profit. And it can count towards their required minimum distribution. So for the donor, it's reducing their, their taxable income, and it's actually making a gift as well. All right, so let's just jump into private foundations. So I'm going to touch on planned giving vehicles. So trusts, private foundations, and a little bit more about DAFs and IRAs. Again, I'm not going to read a ton of the content. It's for you to take home, but just touching base on private foundations is a very popular one amongst business owners because they can maintain control, they can create process and procedure, they know that they've created pillars, they know the types, excuse me, the types of organizations that they want to support because they've created that grant making process, especially Dottie, that's a really good one. You've done a lot of work around that. But again, it's one of the reasons is you have philanthropic intent, why you would want to create a private foundation, but also it's very helpful on the tax side of the house when you're liquidating a business or you're taking conversion from a Roth IRA. So you're kind of offsetting in that particular taxable year against a huge taxable event that you're creating. So I like pictures. And this is basically kind of what it looks like. So you're starting with your family foundation. You've created a private foundation. So the donor dollars are going in and then the tax deduction you can see is going back out to the family. From that point, you've created process and procedure. You're following the mission. You're looking at qualified charities. You've got the grant making and process, and then you're pushing those dollars out. Private foundations actually require a 5% required distribution each year. So there's a lot of calculations that go behind that, but essentially it's about 5% of the value of the assets that have to get pushed out each and every year. So determining how big you would like those particular contributions to be to the not-for-profits, this is all internal. This is all controlled by the company and the foundation. All right. Why are private foundations really, how are they most effective? So the big thing here is if you want to give annually, this is one of the ways you can do it. You are maintaining the ultimate control. There's a lot of flexibility. So there could be a shift within the mission over time from one generation to the next, where you're moving from one type of not-for-profit that you're supporting to another. But again, you can maintain control over the investments within the portfolio, the growth aspect of it. But again, it's another tax implication, another positive tax implication for the dollars that go in that particular taxable year to offset anything that's happening in the foundation. The next is charitable lead trust. So the past 2.5 years, I've seen an uptick in the creation of charitable lead trusts. And what they are basically is a donor creates an irrevocable trust agreement and says, you know what, I want charity A or charity A, B, and C, could be more than one charity, to receive an income stream for X amount of years. It could be 10 years, it could be 15, it could be 20. And then what happens is at the end of that term, whatever's left in that trust reverts back to whatever beneficiary that the donor, the original person who created the trust, names. So it could be their heirs, it could be back to them. It's a great way to reduce the donor's estate, especially if they're in a taxable estate environment. But it's a great way to pass assets to heirs. And that's one of the big things that charitable lead trusts do. And that's why people are doing that. They're like, I can fulfill my philanthropic intent, and I can also pass assets to my heirs. There's many types of charitable lead trusts where you can have a fixed solid dollar amount that goes out each and every year, or one that would adjust. And that's in the world of trusts, we live with acronyms. So there's a CLUT and a CLAT. But there's information in here that kind of leads around that. So again, a great way to kind of reduce your estate and push assets out to heirs. This can be done during your lifetime, or through your estate plan. So two different ways. And again, here's my lovely picture. So you can see how it starts with the grantor, funds the trust. The trust then pushes out the income stream to the not-for-profit, the charity, for a specific set amount of time. And at the end of that time frame, it reverts back to the heirs. And then here's just a little bit of pros and cons around an actual lead trust. So the ones I really want to pass out, the two pros I want to kind of touch on here is that you can postpone the passing of assets to your heirs. So what if your kids, say they're the heirs, are in their teens, you probably don't want them to receive that kind of, those types of assets upfront. But maybe in 20 years from now, that's a great way to fund other trusts or straight out to the heirs in kind. That's usually a huge one when I'm working with clients, the reasoning behind it. Plus, they want to see the not-for-profit actually benefit from the trust upfront during their lifetime. And then again, a big thing is you immediately removing assets from your estate account, from your estate situation. The con is irrevocable. Once it's set in stone. So it's nothing that you can basically terminate. And they're not tax exempt. So charitable lead trusts are basically either, if it's a grantor trust, the grant is going to pay the income tax. But if it's a non-grantor, then the trust will actually pay the tax. So things to keep in mind. Okay, donor advised funds. So donor advised funds, I think, are a very good tool. So you're working with a sponsoring charity that actually you can say, all right, I would like to fund a donor advised fund with $200,000. And I'm going to actually utilize this and teach my kids or employees or whomever it may be on philanthropy, like coming together, deciding the types of charities you want to support, what the dollar amount would be, and then you're basically submitting, you typically a form that you're submitting through your donor advised fund to say, okay, let's send $1,000 out to this charity, $500 out to that charity. So you're receiving the income tax deduction in the year in which you fund the DAF. It's something that you can fund over and over again. So it's not just a set it and forget it kind of tool. So you can add to it each and every year, which is a bonus. But again, keeping in mind about the ACE Act that I spoke about before. So again, pictures, because I like them, it's always good. You can see on the left, starting, you're opening the account, your contributions are going in. The assets then go over to, you're funding into the donor advised fund. So the big heat, so this is one tricky thing about donor advised funds, is that once it's into the fund, the DAF, the donor advised fund, has the actual ultimate control over the distributions. So you're saying, yes, I want to go here, here, and here, but there's typically a clause in these donor advised fund contracts that says ultimately if the donor advised fund, the nonprofit that's running this particular fund can utilize the funds for another purpose. I've never really seen it done, but I still see a clause in there. Right, so I see you're shaking your head. I'm like,
That's how
yeah.
you get the tax deduction,
Right.
by having that clause.
Exactly, by having that clause in there. So, but again, it's a great way to make smaller gifts, to teach philanthropy, to save future kids or anybody else. These are really neat tools, and they're becoming more and more popular. And again, I always like to show some pros and cons around donor advised funds. Again, pros, I'm going to point out just a few ones. You can really make it, like, especially now, it's what, December 15th. You can open a donor advised fund, fund it quickly before year end, and not have to worry about getting those dollars out to the charities today. You can put some thought into it and come January, February, and make your distributions, but because then you can still get your tax deduction in the year in which you make it. And then the other one is there's definitely a pro, no separate tax return for the donor advised fund. That's a good thing, right? That's one less thing you have to worry about. And then cons, the big thing, it's an irrevocable gift. Once it's in, it's in. So the next step is out to a not-for-profit or a charity. All right. When are they most effective? Again, it's that tax, you're offsetting the tax. So it's that whole charitable deduction thing. So you can honestly see the theme that we're having here is that it's offsetting, it can offset an event that's going to occur. And then one great way is to, again, move highly appreciated assets out of your name and into the name of a donor advised fund where they can be sold, liquidated, and then contributed out to charities. So IRA charitable rollovers. I'm really happy to see that this is still in effect. I've worked with a lot of clients that do multi-complex gifting strategies where they'll do 3 or 4 different ways to gift assets to not-for-profits. And this is a really popular one because if you think about it, a donor's 2 biggest assets are their IRAs and their homes. And the IRAs, sometimes they don't want it. They're forced to take the required minimum distribution. They're like, I really don't need it. Well, up to that $100,000, they can fund and push it out to as many charities as they want, as long as it's just 100,000 in each year. So if a husband and wife, they can do 100,000 from each of their IRAs. So that's $200,000 they can gift out, and then they're reducing their income. This one is 70.5. So anybody younger than that, it's really, you have to be in required minimum distribution mode in order to do that. And the pros and the cons. So again, the big pro here is that you're reducing the income that's going out to the donor, so the AGI is actually coming down, and it can be used to complete a pledge that you have to a charity. So these are things that donors and that are looking at to complete, and it can really be part of a really effective charitable plan giving program. And the con here is this big one. These are traditional IRAs. So as of now, it's the company plans, the 401ks, the 403bs, defined benefit plans do not qualify for this. So it really has to be a traditional IRA. Always consult with your CPA. They are key. How are they more effective? Again, just lowering that reduced income rate. You're able to fulfill your philanthropic pledge to a not-for-profit of choice. And again, the married couples, that could be up to a $200,000 gift in total from the couple. So charitable remainder trusts. This is the last one I want to touch on before we're going to open it up for questions. So there's 2 types of charitable remainder trusts, similar to that of a lead trust. There's a fixed income rate that you can say, I am creating an irrevocable trust for the benefit of ABC nonprofit. And what's going to happen is that I am going to have an income stream paid to me during either a fixed set of years, up to 20 years, or lives, depending. And then at my either death or at the end of that time frame, whatever's remaining in that account will then go to the not-for-profit. So it's, again, a great way to kind of irrevocably get assets out of your estate, complete your philanthropic intent when you pass or at the end of the time frame. So there's 2 types. There's a fixed charitable remainder annuity trust, which is a fixed rate. So it's $5,000 every single year. It's going to go to me until I pass, and then at the end of the day, it will go out to the charity. Then there's the charitable remainder uni trust. This values each and every year, and these are the ones that I think are really going to get the dollars to the not-for-profit more so than the annuity trust, because each and every year that trust is revalued based upon the market value. It says, okay, so year 1, $5,000 is coming to me. Year 2, okay, the market did great. Maybe it's $8,000 that's now going to come to me. Year 3, oops, market's not so good. So now maybe it's $4,000 that's going to come to me. So that remittance out to you as a donor is going to adjust based upon market value. And then at the end of the day, when you pass or at the end of the term, then the remaining balance will go to the not-for-profit. These are very common. Again, great tools, great ways to fund these types of trusts, appreciated assets, real estate, any kind of unique asset that you can think of. Just remember, as you're working with your attorney and drafting these documents and your CPA for all the tax benefits involved in it, that you want to make sure that whoever is the trustee of this trust can manage the assets within the account. So a lot of times individuals will fund with real estate, and then what they'll do is they will liquidate the real estate because the capital gains is trapped within the trust. And then literally what they'll do is they'll reinvest it into stocks and bonds and create a portfolio to feed the remittance off of. I know this is a lot of information for so early in the morning, but again, here's my picture. So starting with donors, okay, transferring the funds, funding the trust, back to that donor goes that initial charitable deduction. And then off to the donor, the income beneficiary goes your, where again, based upon years or based upon lives, your income stream. And then at the end of that term, whatever the balance is left in the trust, then goes out to the not-for-profit. You can also you'll hear the term split interest. That could be like, you could create a charitable trust and have 2 or 3 beneficiaries that would benefit from this particular trust. So when you pass or the end of the term, it can go out to 3 different charities as opposed to 1. It's whatever you want. It's the term of the document that you're creating with your attorney. All right, so the pros and cons here. Literally, you're removing assets from your estate, you're creating a taxable deduction, you're supporting a not-for-profit. You can take gifts of highly appreciated assets and fund that trust with it. So again, you're not paying that capital gains tax at all, but the trust it's being deferred out over the years, as opposed to you paying capital gains right up front in that year. The cons, again, it's an irrevocable trust. So once it's set in stone. So make sure that you're working with a really good estate attorney, a trust attorney that understands the business, as well as your CPA, that everybody's on the same page as you're creating these planned giving type instruments. And the con thing here is too, it doesn't go to your family like a charitable lead trust does, it's going actually to the non-for-profit. So with that, let's see, the most effective pieces here is, again, a lot of people who don't have heirs. So if they don't have children, if they don't have beneficiaries or don't want to leave some funds to, charities will benefit from these types of trusts. So those individuals that are like, my kids are set, they really don't need these funds. I'm going to actually create this trust and pass it out to, the children's hospital or whatever it may be. So there's lots of effective ways that these trusts can come into play. That is a lot of information, but like I said, I know that this information is going to be shared with you after the fact, and you can always shoot me an email if you have a question about what we discussed today. Okay? Thank you.
So thank goodness for experts like Cynthia who have that down cold. Because it's a lot of information. The key is there are a lot of different ways to give your money. And there are a lot of different options for how they can meet your goals for you, your family, and your business. If you get to a point where you are thinking about selling your business, talk with your advisor, your financial planner, your philanthropy advisor, before you begin the sale process, because some of these tools can come into play for you at an advantage before the sale happens. So thank you, Cynthia, for that outline. And it's a good thing that we have these slides that we can take away and discuss. So let's move to Q&A. Catherine, I think I see a couple of, do we have anything on chat right now?
I do have one question.
Great. From our Zoom audience. Great, thank you. Oh, great. For the panelists. How do you balance well-known and popular causes, such as childhood cancer, versus other causes that receive less attention but are also important?
I would just repeat what I said before, pick the ones that are important to you. If funding children's hospitals is important to you, that's what you should do. If funding, Charlie Schumann, Charlie's Motor Mall, he and his wife love animals, and they do a lot with the SPCA and animal shelters. That's, to me, you shouldn't feel the weight or the pressure of supporting whatever the United Way, if that's not important to you. We do support them, but
Yep.
That'd be about the similar answer.
Okay, thank you. What are the best learning and business benefits that resulted from giving? We talked a little bit about the impact on your business in being involved in philanthropy, but this is a different take on that question.
So our podcast, as I was telling you, has been a great kind of avenue for us, but I did pick up a couple clients as a result of interviewing guests on our podcast, which was great, but also it was just kind of being not a podcast thing, but I was at a local business in Cumberland and Lucinda's Day Spa, if anyone you know it. I was there on the weekend, getting the treatment. But I was just making small talk with the esthetician and found out she was the new owner of Lucinda's Day Spa. And it was so funny because I just told her what I did and she said, you know what? She's like, I'm really not happy with my agent. And I really want to support other women business owners. And how cool to just as a result of kind of being out there in the community and realizing we had this, we're both women business owners and she wanted to be able to support. That was a pretty cool thing to be able to have that, strike that chord and have that in common and pick up an account that was not the intention of when I walked in, but one of my stories.
Yes, please.
I coached my son's football team and just so happened two of the parents, one was the director of Winter Kids and one was on the staff at Woodford's Family Services. And you just kind of like, it's just another way to get to know people and meet people. And then a lot of these places that we've supported, like when they've done a renovation, they come right to us, we do the work and kind of similar with Dottie, that's not the intent, but that's, you build those relationships and it's all good and it's helpful for the business as well.
Thank you. I have a question here, probably best answered by Cynthia. Can you comment on the use of family limited partnerships and community foundations, land trusts, et cetera, as philanthropy tools?
That would be complex gifting for sure. And yes, I mean, so again, it depends, like land trusts and whatnot, can the community foundation support it? It's looking to their gift acceptance policy. Do they have the abilities within to manage that type of complex strategy? Which typically a lot of community foundations can. It's resources. So you want to make sure that your advisory, so your attorney, your CPA, knows how to properly draft if they're going to give that in, especially around the land trust piece.
Thank you. And just I'll note, I think many of you know that the ACE Act that Cynthia talked about, it's about taking the money that you put again into a donor advised fund and ensuring that you're gifting it back out in the community within 15 years. It seems reasonable for me, but our Senator Angus King is the lead sponsor of the ACE Act, something that I'm proud that he's doing. The benefit of being independent to be able to say that.
Randy,
Yes.
could I just also add on that, the current legislation right now does have a carve out for community foundations as well. Some community foundations are happy about that, others are not, but there is in the current drafted legislation, there is a carve out. So when you're thinking of donor advised funds, talk to your professional advisors, I work at the main community foundation. So talk to the community foundation. We're a resource for you on all of that.
Thanks so much. I have a couple of questions that I'm going to morph into one, and I think this might be our last question.
You have it.
Oh, great. Yes, Priscilla.
It's in your chat. I can read it if you like, or you can check your chat,
Oh, my. Okay.
or I can read it.
Yes, please. Could you?
Hopefully everyone can hear me. Randy opened this session. She talked about support provided in Mexico. So this is a question for the panelists. I noticed the panelists have focused on local community giving. Have they considered including the needs and causes of on the international front, assuming their values extend there as well?
We focus local for now. I don't think it's really been with any special intent to not go wider than that. But I think just for our, a business our size and the relationships that we have, staying local has made sense. That's not to say that that might not be part of our evolution down the road to expand upon that.
it'd be the same for us, both the company and my wife and I, but for us, it is a conscious decision. We make our money locally in Maine, and we really intentionally don't give to anything outside of Maine. And and we don't ever expect to change that. We are very big supporters of Planned Parenthood. They're actually tri-state, but it's meant for Maine.
I echo what they both said, is it's a no for now, but maybe, but we definitely want to support the local businesses that support us. So we keep, that's a conscious decision as well, to get back to the local communities where we have offices and where our people live and are actively involved.
Nice, thank you for that. The beauty is that there's so much to get involved in. It's really where your focus is and what you want to be doing. So I'm going to take a couple of these questions and put them into one. I think they're related, which is around what kind of research did you do on organizations? What are you looking for when you review requests from the nonprofits? So both sides of what I think is same coin.
And I guess I would say for the company, it's a little bit easier, but it really does. You don't need to make the distinction. Every once in a while, we're solicited by something that seems to give very good cause, but we've never heard of. And we look very close. We want to know who's on the board. And there was an organization a number of years ago that was working with veterans that the website looked good. They seemed like it was a really good mission, but there was something just a little bit suspicious, and we didn't fund it. And we always felt a little bit bad. And in the end, they got a lot of trouble because the guy was really, I don't think he meant to defraud anybody. I think he just didn't have it together. And so the money a lot of it disappeared. So we do research. We want to know who they are. And if it's a significant gift, generally it's because we are involved with the organization.
We really just, again, try to adhere to our 3 pillars again of the community involvement. So that's how, if they're, like relief to people in crisis, human social service sector, or youth, sports, education, recreation, we just try to adhere and stick with those for now. And that's helped us. Also, our employees too, like they will come to us with maybe nonprofit or organizations near and dear to them. And those, like Adam, it's kind of a immediate, like, yes, we'll look at those and consider those. And that's where also their community involvement paid time that we give them, that comes into play as well. So they may say, okay, I'm going to take my 16 hours and I'm going to pack backpacks and then 68 hours of hunger. Or I'm going to read to kindergarten students in school because that's important to me. So that's also a way we learn a lot about these wonderful organizations, is just through our coworkers. Let us know about them.
I'd say for us, in a lot of situations with some of the charities that we've become more involved with, it's kind of starts out small, and then you develop relationships with the people that work in those charities or are on the board. And then it kind of evolves from there. And if it fits, what your mission values are, then those are the ones that we lean into a little more.
Thank you. And I want to mention in Maine, 3 resources for you. As Jen mentioned, the Community Foundation, Maine Community Foundation is a resource. Maine Philanthropy Center can also be a resource to you. And then Maine Association of Nonprofits, which has a directory of members that you can, if you're looking for something specific, you can go through their directory. If it's in Maine or outside of Maine or international, and they're an organization that is has a 501c3 corporation, which is a nonprofit corporation in the United States, there's a website called candid.org. CANDID.org, and you can, for free, research based on cause area, geographic search, and there's a lot of basic information that comes up for free. You don't need to buy a membership in Candid. I encourage you to look at Candid. I think a lot of you have heard of things like Charity Navigator and other websites that do some screening of organizations. But they tend to look at the ones that are $1 million and more. So to find the ones that are below that level, or to look at more comprehensive view of a nonprofit, these are some places for you to look at if you're interested in that. Well, this has been a great morning, talking about all kinds of good. Yes, Jen?
Could I just add on the Candid? If you want to see more detail on nonprofits, their 990s, which is the nonprofit organization's tax return, is public record on that. I look it up as GuideStar, but Candid owns GuideStar. So that's really helpful if you want to do a little research yourself. And then if I could just give one tip to everybody, because, you know, education beyond high school is so expensive, and probably your children and many of your employees' children. One tip, have them check out the Maine Community Foundation website, because we have a lot of different charitable funds, but we have scholarships, over 600 of them. And it's a tip to your employees or to your children to say, go look at this. There's money there, there's money available. And sometimes we just don't get that many applications, and it's all across Maine that we support. So there's a little tip to say to your employees, hey, when they're complaining about college education for their children, go look at these scholarships. So thank you.
Another tip, when you're shopping at Whole Foods, if you stop by, buy an opal apple. They taste very different than a Golden Delicious. These are called an apple with a purpose, actually, and they're helping in their community. Lots of different ways to support. Thank you. This has been such a great conversation. I really appreciate the time of our panelists and Cynthia, and thank you to KeyBank, and I'll turn it back over.
Thank you all very, very much. Thank you, Tony, so much for sponsoring us today. Thank you, Cynthia, and thank you, Adam and Joe and Dottie and Randy. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you on Zoom too. We do have some door prizes if anybody wants to put their card in. If you don't have a card, you can fold your name tag over in half and put it in the basket. Our next event is January 25th for our holiday party, so we hope to have you all join us. Thank you, Priscilla, for doing the tech. We appreciate that. Thank you, Seth, for the room. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. If you could please fill out the survey, that would be great. Thank you, Tony. And thank you. Here we go.